Hi, I'm Rappler Entertainment Editor Marguerite de Leon, and welcome to the latest episode of Rappler Talk Entertainment. Today we have a very special guest, Filipino-Canadian stand-up comic Ron Josol. We are sure you've seen his viral videos on YouTube recently. So hi Ron, thank you so much for being here with us today. Oh, sorry, I think you're on mute.
I do I have to unmute myself or do they have to do it?
Okay, your sound is good. Okay.
All right.
All
So,
right. So thank you so much for being here with us.
oh, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's get right to it. First, before we get into your show, tell us first about your roots, like a bit of your background about being Filipino Canadian. Were you born in Canada or were you born in the Philippines?
I was born in Canada, so my mom and dad met in Toronto in the late '60s. They met at Filipino Thursday nights in the Holiday Inn, and that's where all the Filipinos would go meet each other for a party once a week. And there were only 50 Filipinos in Canada at that time.
Wow. In
Yeah,
the entirety of the country?
yeah, and my
Oh
dad,
my God.
my dad said they were the only good-looking people there, so it was an easy hookup.
Yeah. Hottest place in Canada.
Oh yeah, but
So,
that place they met, the Holiday Inn, turned into the
uh,
first comedy club I performed in 35 years later.
oh
Or
wow, really?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's a great coincidence. So, so how was it like growing up Filipino Canadian?
It was so much fun because Toronto at that time had a lot of immigrants coming in from the '70s. So we lived in a neighborhood that had so many Filipinos, so many Chinese, so many Indians, so many Italian, so much Portuguese. You had around 150 cultures around you. So you, hello, yeah, then you kind of felt at home right away. And it wasn't until I started stand up that I realized Canada was mainly white.
So speaking of stand up, how did you get into stand up comedy? Like why stand up in particular?
Say that again. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Speaking of stand up, how did you get into stand up comedy to begin with? Like, and why choose stand up in particular?
So I watched Eddie Murphy Delirious when I was 8, and from that moment, I knew that is what I was supposed to do. So it wasn't really a hard choice. It's already I think some people just know what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
The same way some people just know they're supposed to be together with another person. I saw stand up at 8 years old, and I said, "Oh, that's what I have to do." I had to finish my schooling just to make my parents happy, and then I said, as soon as I graduate my last course, I would walk straight to the comic club the same day I finished my exam.
Oh wow. And you never look back.
Never looked back.
And it's been 25 years since, right? Or over 25 years.
Over 25 years, I would say 27.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you have an upcoming show in Manila this September 22 at
Oh my
Samsung
God.
Hall BGC. So it's called Brown Privilege. How did the show first come about?
Can you hear me? It's.
I
Can you hear me?
you're yeah.
Good.
Can you hear us? Okay, sorry.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah. So you have an upcoming show in Manila, Brown Privilege. How did this show come about first?
Well, I've always wanted to play the Philippines because I do play it regularly. So in the last 10 years, I have been performing with a lot of my friends out there, GB, Labrador, the Filipino the Filipino Manila comedy scene. So I've always loved it. But since the viral video happened, I was like, I would love to do my own show there and have my like the followers actually see me live because I think last February I had like 3,000 IG followers. It's now 100,000 with because of that
Wow.
viral video. And so all the comedy clubs I've been playing outside in North America have been sold out, even without me doing anything. So it was I said I would love to do it in the Philippines, so I called Ronnie, and then we set a show up for that September date.
Perfect. So we can't wait to see that. So you call it brown privilege. That's the title of the show. So what do
Yes.
you think is the biggest privilege of being brown or Filipino?
The biggest privilege of being Filipino, first of all, is everybody loves you. There's something about Filipinos that every single country and culture and religion I've met seems to love them. It's our superpower. People accept us in, and we are very unthreatening, and we're very hospitable by nature.
Yeah.
But don't get us mad because we'll be the worst enemies you'll ever find out. So we're kind of like that. We're super honorable, super friendly, super loving. But you cross our path, we'll be all Manny Pacquiao's.
Speaking of Manny Pacquiao, so you have two kinds of Filipino audiences actually, like the overseas Filipino contingent and what we'd call, I guess, the mainlanders. So, what do you see is the difference between how the two respond to your jokes as someone who does comedy that is mainly about like identity and Filipino ness?
Well, let me add a third. So there's Filipinos from the Philippines,
Mhm.
Filipinos that left and live in North America, and there's
Right.
Filipinos that are born and raised in North America. So I'm a Filipino that's born and raised in North America. And when I do jokes about the Filipino culture, it's usually for people that have moved to North America. So we could talk about the stuff we miss, because when you leave your country and you live in North America, Canada, US, you kind of also leave a little bit of the culture because you have to adapt to a new culture. So when I go on stage, I talk about our culture and remind them, oh yes, this is who we really are, naturally. And so when I do jokes about our culture, they laugh so much more harder sometimes because you're showing them a piece of their life that they totally forgot about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now when I bring it to the Philippines in the last 10 years I've performed, they laugh for a different reason. They're still laughing, and it's not because they left the culture. It's because they never really thought about it because you live the life of a normal human being there. Nobody
Right.
says to you, you're doing something different or you look different. So you're just living life. But because I live in a country where I'm a minority, I have to I notice what the difference is
Yeah.
because how we are different here. So when I put that in perspective to Filipinos from the Philippines, they go, we never really thought about that because we live it.
Mhm.
It's kind of like if I talk about if you're a Filipino and you're living in the Philippines, and as a comedian, you don't talk about the Filipino isms. You just talk about your
Right.
life,
Yeah.
right? Which I do too. But I also have a different perspective as a Filipino that was born and raised in North America and trying to adapt and be assimilated with a culture of even though I'm that culture, they don't see me as that culture. So it's three different point of views, but all can understand from different levels.
Right.
Yeah.
Of those three kinds of audiences, who do you think are the hardest to get a rise out of?
The hardest I would say is the Philippines because I'm not used to performing there as much as the Filipino comedians that perform there. You're
Yeah.
you're only as you're only as comfortable as where you play.
Right.
So the more I play overseas, I become more comfortable. The more I play in North America, I become more comfortable. So the more I play the Philippines, I'll be more comfortable. But this is going to be the first time I have my own show, so it's going to be not only it'll be nerve wracking, but it's going to be so exciting because I can't wait to express myself to everybody there.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of overseas audiences, what do you think about the stand-up comedy scene here in the Philippines?
Well, I started going to the Philippines maybe 12 years ago when it was in its infancy stage. So they called it the POV comedy or stand-up
Yeah.
comedy that's POV. And after 12 years, it caught up to North America the way the world has. So in everything, whether it's basketball, sports, boxing, technology, comedy, it went up there. So we're all playing in the same field now. The difference is we have different references. I'm not going to talk about a certain food here that you don't have over there. I have to I can't. In some places I have to say highway or freeway or autoway,
Right.
right? So different places, and you have to say. So when I go there, I have to change it as well.
Yeah. Well, here all the roads are congested, so it doesn't really matter what you call it.
Yeah, it's just called traffic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the person who's opening for you here in the Brown Privilege show is Red Olorro from Comedy Manila. How did you get to know Red?
So when I started coming to the Philippines to perform 10 years ago, Red was a new comic. He was very nervous. He was very scared. He was very shy, but we hung out every day and he was just really into comedy. I remember him doing a joke that killed and he was so happy. He was like, oh my God, it finally worked. Like he was that enthusiastic. And so when I saw him back then, I said, this guy's going to be great, because he always, whether some people also, when they start, they always think they're doing good. He always knew when he had to fix something and make something better. So he was really smart. So I thought that was a big positive part of him as an infant doing comedy. But now he's unbelievable now.
Yeah. Fast forward to the day, like he just had his big show. I think it was last week. It
Oh,
was a
right.
recorded show. Yeah. So yeah, God on Red. So
Oh, yeah.
um, moving on to being a stand-up comic in general, like I'm curious how much you think of it is as teachable and how much of it is just being naturally funny. Like, is it true that it can be taught?
Yes, stand up can be taught like basketball can be taught. With natural talent, right? And how much dedication you have and your work ethic, that makes a difference.
Mm,
I believe every single person in this world can learn to play basketball the same way they can learn to do comedy. They may not be great at it, but you can teach it. The people that are great, is they learn it, they're natural at it, and they work really hard at it. If you have one of those things off, you're not going to be good.
right.
You gotta be naturally talented. You have to be taught it first, and you have to. How much of that do you actually put effort into?
Yeah.
In fact, that's the probably most important one. How hard you
Right.
work.
I see. So, and I guess this is such a cliche follow-up question, but um, is trauma or having had a lot of difficulties in life like kind of a prerequisite to being funny?
It's a prerequisite to be an artist for sure,
Right.
right? Even everybody. So my brother, both of us had trauma in our family. Uh, I'm more of an artistic person, so I would turn that trauma into some kind of, it manifests itself in art. So whether I
Yeah.
painted, draw, or did stand up, right? My brother was into fighting, so he'd get into boxing, jujitsu, karate, and then his frustration or the way he would vent would be through that. So they both people have the same trauma, and most people in the world have trauma,
Sure.
have something,
Yeah.
but it's the artist that turns it into stand-up comedy or dance or music or visual arts. Like I think that's the main difference, because we have no choice. I
Yeah.
had no choice doing this. It calls you, grabs you, and pulls you, and you have no choice. I was kicking and screaming for my first 3 years, not wanting to do it, but something kept pushing me to do it.
Yeah.
So you don't have a choice when you're naturally part. You have to be naturally part of this. Like I was taught it, I learned it, I worked hard at it, I was naturally funny in it. So it was an easy way of saying this is what I have to do in life.
Right. So you mentioned the kicking and screaming. Like, what were the challenges of starting out as a comedian back then?
Um, so because I started in the mid '90s, the racism level was higher than it is today. There's no call out culture yet. You know, you can get away of making fun of black people, Asian people. You know, so my first 2 years in comedy, Asian comedians don't get this today, but my first 2 years of comedy, I would have racial slurs constantly yelled at me. And so the black comedians would say, "You have to write a comeback." What do you
Yeah.
mean? They say this, you say this. Why? Why do we have to do that? That's just what we have to do. And then when you gain the respect, you do your act. I go, well, the white comics don't have to do that because they're white. So starting in the '90s, the racism level was higher than it is today, more accepted. So the challenge was that right away. Second challenge is a lot of people in the audience, even if they were nice, didn't see Asians as funny.
Oh, I see.
So they're like, "What is this Asian guy going to do on stage?" Because we've never seen. No, again, I was the very first Asian Filipino comic to do comedy in Canada, so they didn't know what I was. Like we don't even have Mexicans in Canada, so they're like, "Why is this Chinese guy got a sunburn?" Like they don't. I to tell you the truth, my first 2 years, I told them I was Chinese because they didn't know what a Filipino was. I said I was Chinese for my first 2 years of comedy. I got an award from the Chinese community.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because I couldn't say I was Filipino. Nobody would understand it. What's that? They thought I'm from Philadelphia.
Do you still have that award somewhere in your house?
Oh, we used it for a door stopper.
Okay, very useful. That's good. That's good to hear. So, you've actually also been a comedian on a cruise ship. Is that right?
Yeah, comedians, when you start comedy, you do comedy clubs, festivals, colleges, corporate shows, and cruises. And cruises are so far from what comedy really is to me,
Mm.
because you're in
Can
the
you tell
middle.
tell us more about that?
You're in the middle of the ocean, right? And you're doing comedy for people. Most people on the cruise around 65 and over, right? And they're people that haven't really ventured around the world.
Yeah,
So this is an easy way for them to see the world at a very old age and enjoy themselves because you're getting old. Why not, right? But then, we are the comedians that have to perform for them. So a lot of the time they don't understand the references of what's pop culture today. They don't understand, they don't know what something like clothes or MMA or something that's new, and they don't understand that as much. So your comedy has to be put down a little so they can understand it. It's like
yeah,
you're trying to make your Lola laugh. Like there's
yeah.
only so much otot jokes you can do. Really. If I want to make my Lola and Lolo laugh, I'll do Bustos jokes, some easy jokes, and like otot jokes. But that's not good for comedy. It's one part, right? So
Sure,
cruises, you have to lower down the expectation. It's not going to be great. You do the stuff that's easy to get. But if you're in Manila, the Toronto, LA, New York, you don't. You have to go the next best thing. Push the envelope.
yeah.
That is not, to me. That's not pushing the envelope. To me, that's going backwards a bit. And no offense to any of the cruise comics out there, but it to me it doesn't help me be a great
Yeah,
comic. It helps me becoming a working comic.
right.
Yeah.
So, like, you've traveled all over the world. Like, what's a memorable country you've been to, or a memorable foreign audience that you've faced?
Norway. So this
Norway.
is, yeah. So I go to Scandinavia every 2 3 years. So I do Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And Norway was so weird to me because the Filipino community called me and said, "We're going to come down." Okay, great.
Oh,
I go, there's Filipinos in Norway. I can't believe it, right? So I go do the show, and then the Filipino community comes up to me, and there's 25 tall women. Like they don't look Filipino.
Yeah.
But then I look at it, they have black hair and a little bit of Asian eyes. I said, you guys are the Filipino community? And they're like, well, we're like, 1/10 Filipino. Like, they're like, back in the 1800s, those are like a Filipino man was um, helping. They were the guys navigating for the big ships,
Yeah.
and they had this Filipino guy who was the GPS of the time. He was Waze. He's make a left here, make a right here. So he's doing that, right? And he eventually stayed in Norway and married a woman, and the Filipino community came from them. But because after so many generations, these are like tall, beautiful women that have
Yeah.
black hair, but they don't see any. There's maybe 1/10, but they all went to the Philippines to find husbands to rebreed
Oh,
the generation to make it stronger.
wow.
Yeah, so we went to their homes, and they're all tall, 6-foot model Norwegian women, and the husband come out 5'2", 200 pounds,
Right.
bald, have a cigarette. I'm like, what? How did she pick you? And he said, don't tell them we're ugly. They don't know. So they were the Filipino community out there. So I didn't realize Filipinos were that far,
Right, right.
because they're
Yeah.
everywhere, especially Asia. But Norway, unbelievable.
That's amazing. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Someone should like look into that, like a sociologist or something.
yeah. Like because
Yeah.
there's Filipinos everywhere in the world. We just don't know how they got there,
Yeah.
and but they're always again I one Filipino guy. There was one. He was the Filipinos did start hip hop and breakdancing in Norway in
Oh
1980s.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's a big hip hop community there, and all the founders and teachers are Filipinos. So I met one of
Filipino.
them, and he said that no, we started hip hop here in Norway. So Filipinos in Norway are known to be the cool hip hop dancers and DJs. And then in Haiti, Filipinos are known as rich businessmen. Because
Really?
because I was flown to Haiti after there was I think it was an earthquake, so I had to
Yeah, the
go
earthquake.
Yeah, so me, this other comedian, this guy, and Neo, the singer Neo, we all flew
Yeah.
to meet the president in Haiti, and then I said, "Why did you bring up me as a Filipino to the president?" He goes like, "Oh, because all the Filipinos own everything here."
Wow.
And he goes, "They'll be at the show. They're the ones helping the community." And so I met all the Filipinos that were working in Haiti, and they're like, "No, we're the multimillionaires here. We own
Right.
all the electronics. They're like the incheck of Haiti.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so you meet all these Filipinos in different parts of the world, and you're like, how did this happen? So it's interesting. Our lifeline is going. You know.
That's so awesome. So, guys, we have a hot tip from Ron Josol. We're all moving to Haiti because apparently that's where the cheddar is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, we're unfortunately down to our last two questions.
Okay.
So, Ron, you've been in the comedy scene for about 27 years, right? So, like, what's the
Yeah.
most important thing you've learned about comedy and about yourself over those decades?
Although that question goes hand in hand, with knowing yourself off stage is a key to knowing yourself on stage. So what makes me funny, what makes me a jerk, what makes me uh, silly or charming off stage, I learn to put it on stage, right? So when you start comedy and you're on stage, you have to recreate the best parts of yourself off stage on stage. right? And then, say the question again. I'm totally messing this up.
What was the most important thing you've learned about comedy and about yourself over
Okay,
those
the
years?
most important thing I've learned about comedy is if you don't do it for the right reason, you're never going to do it at all,
Right.
right? So the right reason could be different from everybody, but do it for the right reason. The wrong reason is I'm doing it to be famous. I'm doing it for money. That's not really, it can motivate you, but it's going to burn you out because at the
Yeah.
end of it all, if you don't love what you do, you're going to hate what you do and you're going to
Yeah.
hate your life.
Okay. So, unfortunately, this is our last question.
Okay.
It's our beauty queen question. What's your advice, Ron, to someone who wants to get into stand-up comedy for the first time?
I would say try it 10 times,
Okay.
right? And after, say this to yourself: can I do this for the rest of my life? Or let's start comedy. It's either you feel that you want to start comedy after those 10 times
Hmm.
because you would not even question yourself.
Right.
Yeah. So do it 10 times and you'll know right after the 10 times. If you even question if you want to do it after 10 times, you don't want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So wise words from Ron Josol. So do it 10 times. If you're a short man in the Philippines, move to Norway. And if you need money, move to Haiti. Okay. This has been a very productive interview, by the way.
Oh my
So thank you
God.
so much, Ron, for being here with us.
Thank you. You're so funny yourself. You do
Oh,
comedy for sure. That was so quick.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So guys, that's it for today's episode of Rappler Talk Entertainment. Ron Josel's upcoming show in Manila, Brown Privilege, will be on September 22, Samsung Hall, SM Aura in BGC. You can get tickets through www.ronjosel.com. And if you have any questions or comments, hit us up on Rappler's socials. I'm Marguerite de Leon. Thanks for watching.